So this is part 2 of Blendshapes. So we've got our character and our 4 blend shapes assigned, and if you go to Window Animation Editor's Blend Shape, you can get your sliders to control your blend shapes. You can keyframe these from the blend shape window, or you can make your changes, hit select, and then key in the standard way. When you select through the select button in the blend shape window, you'll see your blend shape channels available in the channel box. So I'm just going to undo that and bring the sliders back to 0. So what we're going to do is create some controller handles to use to animate and key this little character. We're also going to create a master control handle, and we'll parent our blend shape controller handles to the master controller. The object will be also parented to the master controller. So that'll be a primary handle to move the character and all its components around the scene. So I'm going to start by creating that master controller handle. So I'm just going to put this character on a layer to make management a little bit easier. So I'm going to go over to the layers panel in the channel box, create a new layer. I'm going to call the layer, just put in a LYR extension and save, and then I select the object and right click on the layer and add selected object. Then I can turn the visibility on and off with one click. So let's go ahead and make the master controller. So go into the top view and turn the visibility off on the character. So we're going to create this controller using a CV curve. So go to create CV curve, go into its settings and make sure the curve degree is 1 linear. And it'll allow you to make a hard-edged curve. So I'm going to hold the X key while I do this so I can snap to the grid. So I've just gone through and clicked out this 4-sided arrow object. Once you've finished your controller, just hit enter and it'll go green. I'm just going to switch back to the perspective view and turn my character back on. So at the moment the controller is too small, so I'm just going to scale it up. And this is just something to grab on to move your whole character around the scene. So once you've set the size and you're happy with it, make sure you delete by type the history and freeze the transformations on the controller. You want to give it a title, so I'm going to call this Master CTRL. So now that we have the master created, we're just going to create 4 more control handles to control the 4 existing blend shapes. So I'm going to use a create NURBS primitives circle, and I'm going to start with the smile controller. So I'm going to drag out a circle just to the left of his head. I'm going to try and make this look a little bit like the controller represents. So being a smile, I'm going to make it a smile shape. So go through and make 4 control handles to control your 4 blend shapes. So I've just used the circle primitive and right click control vertex and edited the shape of these circles to create the control handles. So once they're created, there's a few things you need to do to them. So make sure that all of them have their pivot centered. So that's under modify center pivot. And I've got a shelf button up here, or you could hit the G key to repeat. The next thing you want to do is make sure that all their transformations are frozen. So modify freeze transformations, and I'm going to repeat that. And also you want to delete the construction history on them. So delete by type, history. So to make these controllers actually control the blend shapes, we're going to use a tool called set driven key. What we're doing is linking the channels from one node to the channels from another. So we want, say for instance, the translate channel, say the translate X channel on this frown, to control the frown blend shape channel. So every time we move this particular object in that axis, this channel here in the blend shape will go up. So before we apply our keys, let's set some limitations on these actual controllers. So we're going to decide what they're going to do and how they're going to act. So I think that the smile controller should go up and down in the y-axis, and also the frown. And I think the pout and the open mouth should go left and right. So we're going to limit their capabilities in the channel box. So we'll start with the frown controller. All we want this frown controller to do is go up and down. So we need only the translate Y. So what we're going to do is select the rest of the channels in the channel box, right mouse click, and go lock and hide selected. The smile's the same. We're going to use the Y channel as the driver. And we'll make these two other controllers go sideways in the X-axis. So this open mouth one we'll select, and we'll do that again for this channel. Lock and hide. So now each controller should only have one channel in the channel box. And this one has an X, this one has an a Y channel, and this one has an X channel. Next, go through and name them. And we've got frown, open, and smile controllers. The reason we're doing this is we're trying to clean up the character rig to make it as simple as possible for an animator to use. Okay, now that these controllers are named, we're going to set some limitations on them. So what you don't want is this controller to be able to be movable in an infinite increment in the channel box. You want to be able to move it up and it stops, and move it down and it stops. It only goes to a certain point. So we're going to have to switch to the attribute editor, and this is an up and down controller. So go to the frown control, the first node. So we need to do that in the limit information translate tab. So we're going to make its current Y value to -2, and this is the minimum Y value it'll go. So we use this little arrow to copy the value over and hit the translate limit Y. And then we'll set the positive values. The positive value is going to be 2.0, and we'll copy the value over and set the limit. So once you're done with that, just zero it out and move on to the next controller. This one goes sideways, so we're actually in translate X. So just go through and set up the limitations on the 4 controllers. Remembering you're using limitations on the X for the sideways controllers, and your limitations on the Y for the up and down controllers. Okay, so we've got our master control set up. We've got our blend shape controllers set up, and they only move in the required axis, and their movement is limited. Now it's time to set up our set driven keys. So firstly, you need to have your blend shapes window open. So go window, animation editors, blend shape if you haven't already. You also need to open the set driven key window. So go to the animate menu, go to set driven key, and click the set button, and this is the set driven key window. So we need to choose what our driver is and what our driven is. So in this case, the shapes, the NURB circles, are going to drive the blend shapes. So we'll start with the frown. So select the frown and go to your set driven key window and click on load driver, and it'll give you the available channels, and in this case we only have one available channel. Now go to the driven, and that's the blend shapes. You want to actually click the select button on the blend shapes, and once your blend shapes are selected, click load driven, and now you'll have your actual controllers. So in this case we're setting up the SDK for the frown, so select the frown. So what you want to do is grab your frown controller, which is an up and down controller, take it down to its minimum value, and you want your blend shape for your frown on its minimum value, and then click the key button in the SDK window. Then you want to bring your controller up to its maximum value, bring the blend shape up to its maximum value, and in the SDK window, click the key button again. Let's just test that this works. So now I've got a control handle that controls the frown shape. So let's do another one. So I'm just going to zero that out. Or in this case, I'll bring it back to -2, which zeroes out the blend shape. Let's do the open mouth. So we'll start with the open mouth and make sure you select the right controller and the right blend shape. So in this case, I want to load the driver as the open control and go to my open blend shape bring my open mouth to its negative value, bring my blend shape to its negative value, and in the SDK window, click key. Then I'm going to bring the open mouth controller to its positive value, bring the blend shape to its positive value, and in the SDK window again, click key. So I'll just check that works. Okay, so now I'm going to do the smile. So I've got a load driver, translate Y, and select smile. I'm going to bring the smile to its negative value, click key, bring the smile to its positive value, bring the blend shape to its positive value, and click key. And we've now got one more to do. So that's the pout controller. So let's just make sure all our controllers work. So that's my pout controller. That's my smile controller. This is my open mouth controller. And this is my frown controller. So now we have 4 working control handles. We can close the blend shape window and we can close the SDK window. So these relationships are now locked into Maya. So when you're animating, you actually use your controller handles, and in the channel box, you set your keys on your controller handles. Incidentally, if you want to change the value of something from the channel blocks, if you click on the name, you can middle mouse drag the value up and down in the viewport. And most animators use this method. So I'm just middle mouse dragging, sideways and down. So you might have noticed there's a little problem with this. When these controllers are zeroed out, they just intersect a little too much. There's a couple of ways around this. One of them could have been when you set them up, you could set them up further away from each other. Or alternatively, we could have made our minimum value 0 and our positive value, say, +4, and you still get 4 units of movement. But they begin wherever we originally placed them. So now we've got our controllers, our master controller, and our object. These are all ready and rigged. So let's grab our controllers, shift select our master, and go P for parent. And our object, shift select our master, and P for parent. So now I've got a master to move the whole rig round in the viewport. So one more thing I forgot to mention is this mesh with its active blend shapes is only running on Maya's smooth preview, which means certain renderers will actually render it out like that, unsmooth. So what we can do is go and convert the smooth mesh into actual polygons. So select your character, hit 3 to go smooth mesh, and then go to modify, convert smooth mesh preview to polygons. The only thing is, if you look over here in the channel box, I've got some poly splits and a smooth face node in my inputs. What we want to do is delete the history we don't want, but we want to keep this blend shape 1 node in there. So select your object, go edit, delete by type, non-deformer history. And now I'll just have the blend shape node and the tweak node left. The tweak is the edit that you performed on your duplicates. If you're wondering why my shape controllers look a little bit different than they did 2 seconds ago, is I've just moved to a different version.